Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts, in which I present my September month-end wrap-up and my Victober TBR. I read 6 books in September. In the first half I read Old Goriot by Honore de Balzac, The Knight's Tale in the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, The Sun in Splendour by Plaidy, and The Four Swans by Winston. All of which I reviewed in my September mid-month wrap-up. In the second half of September I finished reading Last Seen Wearing by Colin, Dexter, which is the second novel in the Inspector Morse series. Is it a murder mystery? Morse thinks it is, and he proceeds to elaborate some complex and intricate scenarios based on the immediate evidence before him. When this turns out to be incorrect, Morse is undaunted and concocts another series of events which he assures his sidekick Sergeant Lewis that this is how it must have happened. When this also falls apart, Lewis shares with Morse his own elaborately concocted scenario, and Morse agrees that this is exactly how it all happened and by whom. So they stumble around in the dark, testing first one hypothesis and then another, believing that it was first this person and then another person, first this killer and then that killer, first this victim and then another victim. Thus the truth is accidentally stumbled upon, but Morse thinks that this is also a false trail, until finally the truth is revealed, and of course it is not exactly what you expect. The great merit of the Morse novels is not so much in the mystery, which often mystified me, but in the telling, in which Dexter is brilliant, and in the characters and the relationship between Morse and Lewis. All in all, a hugely enjoyable novel. I read several more tales in the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, as there are prologues, tales and epilogues, some of which are witty, interesting and entertaining, and others which are not. I'm not finding it easy to review it. All I can say is that the style in which it is presented in rhyming couplets does not make it an easy read. Some of the content is dull and boring, so even though there are some witty episodes, overall I'm not entirely enthralled with the Canterbury Tales. This is one of those occasions where I'm reading it so I can tick it off my list, which is not a very noble reason for reading it, but it is the truth. I finished reading The Black Count by Tom Reiss, which was recommended by Alba of Seriella. I will leave a link to her channel in the show notes below, and if you've not already subscribed to her channel, then you need to remedy that immediately, because she is brilliant, intelligent, articulate, knowledgeable and engaging. The Black Count is the fascinating biography of Alexander Dumas' father, and it is certainly an eye-opening account of the illustrious author's even more illustrious father. The Three Musketeers and the Count of Monte Cristo are of course fiction, but here a prize-winning author shows us that the inspiration for the swashbuckling stories was in fact Dumas's own father Alex, the son of a marquis and a black slave. He achieved a giddy ascent from private in the dragoons to the rank of general. An outsider who had grown up among slaves, he was all for liberty and equality. Alex Dumas was the stuff of legend. So how did such an extraordinary man get erased by history? Why are there no statues of Monsieur Humanity, as his troops called him? The Black Count uncovers what happened and the role Napoleon played in Dumas's downfall. By walking the same ground as Dumas, from Haiti to the pyramids, Paris to the prison cell at Taranto, Reiss, like the novelist before him, triumphantly resurrects this forgotten hero. I found the biography interesting and informative, especially relating to Napoleon's ambivalent attitude towards General Dumas. On the one hand, he applauded him for his bravery and his excellence as a general, and on the other hand, he hated him for his republican ideals. Napoleon, by the time of his invasion of Egypt, had already become a megalomaniac with grandiose ideas of his own importance and a sense of his destined position as the ruler of an empire. Dumas, who had once been an aristocrat, was a dedicated republican and held to the principles of the revolution. Napoleon's thinking had long since progressed past the ideals of the revolution, and thus he hated anyone who would not bow to his imperious will. The consequences for General Dumas, and subsequently for his widow, were devastating. Now for a surprise haul. I went to my local post office to post a letter, and there is a charity shop close by. My wife drifted into it, and I followed her, and of course I headed straight for the books. I looked at the shelves idly when my eye caught the spine of this book, and I saw the name of Alexander Dumas, and the name of a book I had never heard, called The Last Cavalier. I'd never heard of The Last Cavalier. I thought that looks interesting, so I took it down, and when I turned it over, I was delighted to discover that it said The Lost Masterpiece. So of course I had to have it, and at 30 pence it was an absolute bargain. When I looked inside and found that the novel was divided into two parts, part one of which is called Bonaparte, and part two of which is called Napoleon, I knew that I was in for a treat. I'm going to read it in non-fiction November, together with a biography of Napoleon called How Far from Austerlitz, 1805 to 1815 by Alistair Horn. And now to my Victober TBR. I will only be participating in two of the challenges. Angie's challenge is to read a book by a Victorian female author. In April I read East Lynne by Ellen Wood, which is excellent. I produced a spotlight on episode which you can view in the info cards above, and I'm planning to read Daniel Deronda by George Eliot next year for another challenge I'm planning to do. Kate's challenge is to reread a Victorian book. For this I'm going to reread The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler and Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Katie's challenge is read a Victorian book under 250 pages. For this I'm going to read Dr. Wortle's Score by Anthony Trollope, and or over 500 pages. For this challenge I'm going to read The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. And now here is the thirsty thought.